Yes, thank you, Chair. Dr. Quaid, Dr. Dachis, Dr. Fay, um, what is the difference between competition policy and the Competition Act? What do you see as the purpose of competition policy, and how much of competition policy should be carried by the Competition Act?
Now I'm going to be really constrained by the 5 minutes.
No, but this gets at some of the key differences of opinion that we've been dancing around, I feel.
Yeah, I think my answer is telling it we can't do this. We can't have that debate right now when we're dealing with these kinds of amendments. This is we've got maybe a couple weeks until this legislation passes. Now is not the time to be having that discussion. You have that discussion first, then you have legislative amendments that come, not the other way around. And that's the fundamental problem that we're dealing with today.
Mr. Fay? And to be brief, I fully agree with what.
Well, Mr. you can be a little bit more than that.
Come on, guys. Come on.
I mean, yeah, like I'm not a legal scholar. I'm an economist. So to me, competition policy is something that's very broad. It's the act, I think, is the interpretation of a particular view, as Professor Quaid said, of values. But competition policy, I think even Senator Deakin also mentioned. I mean, it's not just the act; it's a whole bunch of other things that help to enforce competition in the economy. We heard it from Michael as well. There's all these other things that are out there that need to be examined, and that's why you need that comprehensive approach, so you don't get these unintended consequences. I don't know if I've really answered your question, but it is very broad from my perspective.
I did hear a similar answer last night, Senator Wu, from from the witness from the Competition Bureau in terms of pro-competitive policies. So I think that's interesting, Professor Quaid. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I will come out boldly and declare my colors. The others are being careful.
Yeah.
This is not obviously the right time to be having this conversation. It should have had before. I think we've all said that. However, my view is that competition policy now in this economy, in this society, must engage with the other values that are important to us. And if I were going to identify a sort of organizing value, I would say that we need to think about competition policy as contributing to overall human thriving in Canadian society. That means more than just aggregate economic welfare, which has tended to be the base metric that we use for competition policy as imagined in the Act, which is really just the legal operationalization of it. I think there are some fundamental things about competition policy, some unstated assumptions that need to be revisited, hence the importance of consultation with all stakeholders.
Thank you for your clarity and honesty. I wish the economists would respond. Are they willing to?
Sure. And I would say, I do disagree with Professor Quaid about what the purposes of competition are, and that's fine. And but we should be able to have that conversation.
Okay.
And these are deep debates that take a long time to understand the implications and have Parliament really debate that and understand that before they pass other adjacent legislation.
Can I jump in too? I mean, I think fundamentally, and I think it follows on Professor Quaid's point. I mean, what we really are seeing is a deterioration of trust in our institutions, and we've seen that in attacks on various institutions that are taking place, and maybe some of that is undeserved, but I think people don't necessarily understand the role of our institutions, and I think I tried to make this point in my opening remarks, whether our institutions are delivering what people expect from them. And so this is part of that consultative process where we can people can get to understand what is the Competition Bureau actually supposed to be doing versus other regulatory bodies and get that clarity, but also recognizing that there's interlinkages among them and setting up the structures to allow that to happen. But I'm quite worried about the trust element.
Thank you for indulging me.